Hello, everybody. I'm Josh. So my project is called Dronestream, and it begins in 2002. On November 3rd, a United States Predator drone entered Yemen's airspace and killed 6 people in a car. As Jeremy Scahill put it, it was the first publicly confirmed targeted killing by the United States outside of a battlefield since Gerald Ford implemented a ban on political assassinations in 1976. Right? So first covert drone attack, 2002 in Yemen. The second covert drone attack happens almost 2 years later in Pakistan, 2004. The target was apparently this gentleman, Nek Mohammed. A missile from a US drone tore through the mud building he was in, severing his left leg and ending his life. But it also killed 7 other people, including 2 kids who were 10 and 16 years old. Right? So second drone attack, 2004, Pakistan. The third drone attack happens about a year later, in 2005, also in Pakistan. 2 people were killed in a car. 8th drone attack, 2006. 80 to 82 people, including 69 kids, were killed at a school. 165th drone attack, 2010. These kids' parents, along with their 8 and 10-year-old brothers, were killed when a missile hit the wrong house. 444th drone attack, 2012. Nabila's grandmother was outside of her home picking vegetables when a missile came out of the sky. Fast forward to last month, April 17, 2013. Faria al-Muslimi, his village of Wasab, where he had been singing the praises of how awesome his experience was going to high school in California, became the target of a US drone. And he said when he testified on the floor of the Congress, that now, when farmers in Wasab think of America, they think of the fear they feel at the drones over their heads. And he said that what violent militants had failed to achieve, one drone strike accomplished in an instant. Right? So how did we get here? 10 years, 480-ish secret drone strikes, 4,700 people. And what can our relationship be with this story? Right? I've been asking myself this question for a little while and iterating on this data set in a few different ways. The first thing that I did was make an iPhone app, and it was called Drones Plus. And the idea for it was really simple. It would send you a push notification or just ping your phone every time there was a US drone strike. Right? So even if we have access to the data about drone strikes, do we really want to be interrupted by it? Right? Do we really want to be as connected to our foreign policy as we are to our smartphones? Our phones, which are these increasingly intimate devices, right? The places that we share pictures of our loved ones and communicate with our friends. The things that we pull out of our pocket when we're lost, which auto-magically put us at the center of the map and tell us where we're going. Do we really want these things to also be the site of how we experience remote war, right? In an age when it's possible to sit in an air-conditioned room in New Mexico and control an airplane as it hovers over a village in what used to be India, is there a way to close that feedback loop a little bit and actually feel something, even if it's just my pocket vibrating when the missile hits the ceiling? Luckily, Apple helped answer the question for me. They loved the app, right? They loved it so much that they rejected it 3 times just to make sure more people would hear about it, right? They said that it was excessively crude or objectionable content, and it did not appeal to a broad enough audience. But in the process, I heard from a lot of people who said, you know, hey, I might actually download this thing, or like, let me know when you make it for Android. So with that in the back of my mind, the next thing I did was start a Twitter account. I said I was going to tweet the entire history of US drone attacks, one by one, starting at the beginning. The idea basically being, you know, who are these people who are being killed? How do we know that they have in fact been killed? Where does the information come from? If it's run by the CIA and it's officially not acknowledged to have happened, how do we actually know this? So I started reading a lot of news reports, right? I also said that it was going to take 10 minutes to tweet the entire historical archive and try to bear witness to this in a real-time platform. It's been about 5 months, and we're still in May of 2012, right? So still about a year left to go. Part of the reason that it's taken so long is because I'm manually reading through every single news article that I can find about every single drone attack in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia that's been reported. Part of that is because a lot of the news articles look like this. Very dissimilar, as you can tell. These are 2 years apart, these 2 stories. They basically say the same thing with different numbers, sometimes names of different provinces, Usually they have the words militant, hideout, compound, things of that nature. And it's almost as if there's so much non-content that it's hard to glean any meaningful details. So a lot of the work has really been reading each one of these articles and trying to find if there is a detail around which some sort of mini narrative can be wrapped, right? So, if there's 5 men standing in a circle who are incinerated from above, maybe there was a camel tied up next to them that was also killed in the attack, things like that. Luckily, there is a fantastic organization called the Bureau of Investigative Journalism based in London. And 3 people there in particular, Jack, Alice, and Chris, have been doing incredible work of tracking every single one of these news articles and putting them in one place. So the Bureau of Investigative Journalism has been aggregating all of these reports. They have about 10 very long scrolling web pages broken out by year and by country that effectively look like this. There's a date, there's a number of people, or really a range of a number of people who were reported killed. There's sometimes names of the folks who were reported killed if they're available, and there's references at the bottom. So in order to do all these tweets, I've been clicking on each one of these links at the bottom and reading them and trying to see what I can find and distill. Right? So what I'm doing for my thesis, what I've done for my thesis, is make a website that takes all of the data from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and makes it machine readable. Right? So trying to think about a way that developers and designers can engage with this historical archive that's sort of a lightweight thing where they can make visualizations or otherwise help us understand what it all means. So the website looks like this. Like I said, it's real-time and historical data about every US drone strike. It's a publicly accessible API. It will be a real-time Twitter account once I finish the archive. It's a searchable database, and most importantly, it's human stories. It's the narratives of people who've been killed by these secret missiles, right? So the idea behind making the API was fairly simple. If it's taken me 5 months just to go through and read all this stuff, why not put it into a database and let people fork it and do the things that they want to do? If they want to create some sort of nice data visualization, let them do that easily. So I built a database that will return just a full JSON feed of everything so that you can make a web application fairly simply and fairly quickly. The reason I want to do this, again, is to try to visualize this historical archive in ways that I can't even think about. I'm sure there's lots of other very talented technologists who can do that much better than I. I'm thinking of visualizations like the following one, made by Pitch Interactive, which is the story of every known drone strike and victim in Pakistan since the first one in 2004. So one of the people that I've been really inspired by is the artist Trevor Paglen. He has a book called Blank Spots on the Map, where he really takes a spatial analysis to approach the idea of secrecy. Right? It begins from this premise that geography is an inescapable existential reality. Right? Everybody has a body. Nobody can escape from their body. And thereby it isn't really possible to render things non-existent or to make things invisible. In the context of 480 secret drone attacks and the Alice in Wonderland nature of the legal conversation surrounding them, my project is actually about mapping blank spots in the data, or blank spots in the narrative. How can the metadata gleaned from English language news reports be used to reconstruct an image of the negative space that these drone strikes take up? If we know, for instance, that 4,700 people have been killed and we don't really know who they are, how do you represent that information? One of the interfaces that I made tries to play with this idea of blank spots. It is a website where it hides every covert drone attack behind a blank tile with a number on the front and lets you filter through the various years and countries where these attacks happened. Another interface is a bit more practical, and in some ways I sort of made it for myself. But it's also for legal scholars and people who want to search for a specific drone strike or more easily go through and read the stories that the Bureau of Investigative Journalism has collected. The interface looks something like this. And the last interface I'm going to show is something that Federico basically made overnight. It is taking the data and putting it onto a map. So it's just a quick visualization of the entire history in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. So all of this is powered by the Dronestream API, which will hopefully be a go-to source for real-time information about future drone attacks. As soon as the Twitter account catches up and rolls into real time, I plan to continue to maintain this as an experiment in content delivery. What does issue-specific journalism look like in a post-print context? Are there existing news organizations who would like to hook into this kind of an API, and what would that look like? At the end of the day, though, I suppose that I'm most intrigued by what it means to publish human stories and represent information in the age of big data, particularly when those stories are about people whose identities are not altogether known. When Fareya al-Muslimi can live tweet the drone attack on his village in Yemen and 6 days later be talking on the floor of the US Congress, it feels like there's something of a feedback loop that's already being completed. To Americans like me, what may have previously been blank spots on the map, all of a sudden have complex stories, right? They have voices of their own. From 30,000 feet, it might just be cars and buildings. But there are people in them, people who live under the drones that we fly, people whose camels are killed by our anti-tank missiles. A 16-year-old US citizen born in Denver, Colorado, who was goofy and loved hip-hop music and was barbecuing with his cousins one night when a piece of the sun fell out of the sky. There are people who can speak back to the drone now and be heard. And if I've learned anything from my time at NYU thinking about uplifting things like aerial death and data and geography, it's that people like listening and people want to be connected. So what comes after that connection? What do we do once we have an alert about a drone strike in our pocket? What happens after the death toll gets counted and stored in the database? I'm going to end with some final questions. As we move ever closer to the quantified self, what about unquantified selves? What about the farmers who wake up at night to the sounds of our airplanes? Or the parents in Yemen who apparently tell their kids to go to sleep at night by saying, "You better get in bed or else I'm going to call in a drone strike on you." Where are those kids going to be in 10 years? How do you kill your way out of a complex problem? And what can we learn as technologists from the data if we don't even really have access to it? Anyway, Dronestream was my attempt to take a largely hidden data set, clean it up a bit, try to make it machine readable, and try to make it a little bit more visible. So you can check out the API here. Thanks.